actions are what really matter. Our actions are what define who we are and what we do. Our actions show the decision made in our heart. Our actions show the walk that we're on, the pathway and the journey. When you have clear, defined goals, it doesn't matter if there's a path or not. Most of the time when you're doing something really big, there's no path. And it's uncomfortable the first time. Second time it gets a little better, and then you just get used to it. And if you have that everyday normal, you want to think about how special it is, how you can lift others up to be able to do the same thing, but also how you can live a truly stupendous life. How you can live a life that if you're 31 and that I-beam's going through your chest, you don't question it. Hey gang, it's Legendary Excellence. Joining me today in Gary, South Dakota. It's nice to be home. Been traveling quite a bit, and I always enjoy these moments where I get to be present, get to be home, and get to have some time here. Today's a bit of a special episode, and I'm talking about a difficult topic, which is specifically one that I'm talking about because some buddies are going through this right now. And the challenge that we run into is, what do you do when you lose a buddy? And it's you lose people that are close to you. It can be very difficult. You also can lose people that are on the periphery of your life. And when that happens, it can be a very, very difficult journey. So recently on Interstate 24 in Nashville, a friend of a friend got killed driving truck. What had happened was that he had a 31-year-old gentleman. He was driving a load of I-beams, and traffic backed up. He stopped really quick, and unfortunately the load securement wasn't sufficient, so the I-beams ended up going through the cab of the vehicle and killing the gentleman. Now, I've got a number of friends that are from that same community in Wisconsin. And when this happens, I want to talk about some of my personal experience with this issue, some of the ways that I've framed things, and things to be aware of when you're processing grief. Because when you lose somebody, especially when it's somebody that's a contemporary of yours, it's very easy to fall into different challenges, to fall into different perspectives, different situations with this. So again, I know Bob, Ryan, Josh, Ray, this one's for you guys. So I read the accident report. It says 31-year-old trucker dies after beam punches through cab in Interstate 24 Nashville wreck. It's awful. It's semi-truck driver died just before midnight near the I-40 split after a load of steel beams shifted violently inside the trucker. According to investigators, traffic ahead slowed suddenly, causing the driver to hit the brakes hard. Forces pushed the massive steel beams forward, breaking free, crashing through the cab. I have a CDL. I don't drive a lot of truck. I'm not an expert on trucking, but I've driven enough truck to understand that load shifts are a real thing. You don't have to be driving something really big to know that load shifts are a significant thing. I remember for a while I was living someplace where I didn't have running water, and so I would truck water in, and I got one of those IBC containers, the cubes, and I had it on the back of a pickup truck, and that water slosh, because I couldn't carry the full cube. Just that water slosh was really difficult to be able to handle in that truck. And hauling, especially coil or beams is so dangerous. And so I want to take a moment just to call out that if you're driving truck, if you're working industrial jobs, you want to really think about what the relationship is with what you're doing, because the opportunity there so often is to pay attention to what the risk is and to mitigate the risk. And there is no criticism of this gentleman who passed away. But as guys that are blue collar that work on these projects, you got to take the time to really evaluate the risk of everything you do. I'm a certified master rigger, and I'm also certified overhead crane operator. Have a lot of skills, a lot of capabilities in working in industrial settings. And it's so easy to get complacent. I think about being on a turbine deck and pulling bearings, which I know some of y'all are doing literally right now. When you're working with that hockey stick on that lift that underhook attachment, you are at such high risk. And we get used to it. We get used to it every single day. Think about it every single day, is that this is what we do. This is what's natural to us. This is what being a millwright, being an iron worker, being a pipe fitter, being a truck driver, that this is what we do every day. I have to tell you that what we do every day is a unique and special thing. And I say this as a guy that really lives that life. Because, I think it's 8 years I've been doing industrial work. Last 8 years I've been working on heavy construction, been working with cranes, been driving trucks, helping to be able to manage with safety with different organizations. And the challenge is we get so used to what we're building. We get so used to creating something amazing, something huge, and we don't notice it. We stop paying attention to the risk because it worked last time, right? Hauling steel beam, I've actually had experience with this where I've driven truck and I've had issues with the beams moving. And it's really difficult because, you can belly wrap it and you can do everything that you're supposed to do right, and you can still have stuff shift while you're driving. And especially in challenging environments where you have traffic, where you have, different weather conditions, all of that. This is what it is. So we always want to turn our attention to accident prevention in all that we do. Hang out with a bunch of farmers and a bunch of ranchers where I live. And I have to tell you, some of the stories I hear scare me because I hear about augers and I hear about, having issues in a grain bin and swimming up in through the grain and doing things like that. And it might take an extra 2 hours to do it the slow way, but it's safe. And I want to encourage you to do it the safe way, because the more that we spend our time in accident prevention, in safety, the better we can do as workers, the more times we're going home to our families. And I have to tell you, even if you're a single guy, even if you're a single girl, and you're out there and you get injured, there's people that are going to miss you. There's people that love you. There's people that are your friends that are going to be really hurt by that. And so being aware of what the consequences are of your actions and thinking that process through is a critical element of all that we do in industrial work. For a while, I was working down in southeast Indiana on the Kentucky border on the Ohio River, and they have a bunch of steel manufacturers down there. Nucor has a lot of facilities. And with Nucor, they'd be shipping out all of this coiled sheet steel. So it'd be coiled up and they'd be shipping it out. And you'd see those trucks. I've put a lot of binders on a truck. I've taken them off. I've put them on. And that coil, the same situation that this gentleman passed away in, is another place we really want to pay attention. When we're hauling all this agricultural equipment, we need to pay attention. We need to really take that step back. Sometimes I used to do a lot of yoga. I was really into yoga, and they always said, come to the situation with beginner's eyes. We want you to have beginner's eyes, to look at it at the same time, the same way that somebody that's looking at it the first time would look at it. Double check those binders, double check the chains, double check the strapping, everything. We want to make sure that things are 100%. This goes double for all my millwright buddies, because I know y'all are doing this all the time. Pile driver buddies, where you're out there, double check your load attachment, double check the wire ropes, double check every sling, every time, because it just takes one. And I don't want to be going to funerals. No one wants to be going to funerals, but it's also the hurt that comes from losing the buddy. So in this case, I was on a call last night with one of my brothers, and he was talking about the reality of what he's dealing with. That this was a guy that's the same age he is. This is a guy that they were relatively new friends, but like racing cars. They like fast cars. They like being able to do really cool things. The gentleman was an operating engineer, so he's part of AFL-CIO. The gentleman that died, not my other buddy. When this happens, you want to take a step back. You want to give yourself a pause. I know there's a bunch of us working 713s right now, trying to get a machine fixed. And we feel a great obligation to get that machine fixed. We feel a great responsibility. And I applaud that and I encourage that. But you're also not the only person in this world that can fix that machine. But taking the step back and evaluating your life. I had this happen to me a little over a year ago. I had a buddy of mine, his name was Phil. Phil was a really eccentric guy. He's a really great guy. He had a lot of characteristics that were positive. He had some characteristics that were challenging. But on the whole, he was one of the people that understood me really well. We could talk really well. We weren't the same on everything, but we got along. Phil was in his 70s. He had a great wife, very nice lady. He had a bunch of daughters who do really well, have accomplished some really great things in life, who have great families. And Phil was really dedicated to being able to help his community. Wasn't always in the easiest way. There's a couple times where I was there where Phil was having a conversation with someone and it kind of made my teeth itch. It was hard to listen to. But on the whole, Phil's heart was always in the right place. And Phil, even though he was in his 70s, I thought he'd be around for another 20 years. I was looking forward to it because I liked our friendship. Phil would show up at my front door to my house at like 9:30 at night and he'd be banging on the door like he was the cops. And he would get it, he would walk in the door, and it was like being in the middle of a hurricane because he had all these ideas, had all these concepts, and he always talked about faith. You know, it was something that I really remember the guy. He talked about how much he loved his family, how proud of he was of his daughters, how much he loved his grandkids. And he talked about Jesus Christ. Fortunately, there was a issue with the propane at Phil's house. And Phil was somebody that liked to collect things a lot. He was somebody that had a lot of stuff and a lot of collection of stuff. And Phil didn't like to spend money. There were a bunch of reasons for this. It doesn't matter us going into the details on it now. But Phil was very principled. So Phil goes and he's out in town and he's talking to people and doing his thing. And he goes home because it's wintertime last year, 2024. And he goes in the house and there had been a propane issue. Propane's heavier than air, accumulates in basement areas. And he walked into the house. I can't remember if he was fixing something or whatever, but he hit a light switch or there was a spark. And the propane exploded. When the propane exploded, Phil was torn apart. Body was torn apart. He was caught under a pile of rubble, as was his wife. His wife was severely injured and was able to get transported, was able to survive. And thank God for that, because his wife's an amazing woman. She does great things in our community. She's somebody it's part of the glue that keeps the community together. Sometimes you have people that are more quiet, but they're always making things happen. They're always, you just know that they're making positive contribution. Phil got airlifted and was taken to a regional trauma center, and they did everything they could to save his life, but unfortunately he passed away. Remember, because I was at Prairie Island working on the turbine deck, and my buddy Lucas, who you see on these videos, texted me and said, "Hey, Phil's house blew up." And I thought when he said Phil's house blew up that it was like the windows got blown out or, whatever. No, like Phil's house, which was like this giant, imposing house filled with stuff, literally got blown up and it became a pile of debris. Part that's hard when you lose somebody is in your mind you create a future together. In your mind you create this path where we're going to be buddies, where we're going to be this, where we're going to be that. Phil passing away ended that future. Phil passing away meant that it was the end of our journey together on this earth. Look forward to seeing him in heaven, because I'm sure he'll be there and have a lot of thoughts about things, and he'll probably have some songs and limericks and stuff like that. But Phil was a real ass dude. Phil wasn't pretending. He couldn't pretend. He was authentic. He was real. It wasn't always comfortable. There were times where he said stuff, or I was there where he was having a conflict with someone. I got to tell you, man, it was hard to be around. I'm not perfect. He's not perfect. The thing was that his spirit and his message about who he was so pure. It was so real. I'd spoken to his daughters, and I had the opportunity to speak at Phil's funeral. And when I spoke at Phil's funeral, I spoke about the only words that I could use to describe Phil, which are legendary, excellence. This podcast is called Legendary Excellence. When I think about that, so much of it is because of the commitment to authenticity, to truth, to standing up for what's right. And it doesn't always mean I agreed with the guy. I'm one of those guys where I'll hang out with a bunch of different people. There's only a couple things that'll make me not hang out with you. And it's very specific behaviors. But in general, I will hang out and talk to people that have very different perspectives than I do. Because I want to learn. And I also know that through walking together, we all get better. We all get stronger. It was an honor to know Phil. It was a joy to have Phil in my life. It was nice as a guy that moved to a new neighborhood, to a new town where he didn't have any connections, to have somebody that was enthusiastic to see him. It was a joy to have somebody that he mowed the lawn for me. He did a great job. But he always had this old lawnmower, and he was cantankerous about it at times. And so I'd come home and, I'd be on the road working, and I'd come home and the lawn would be getting mowed. And he'd be there, working to talk the mower into working, which was, it was cool. It was cool to be around because there was just this authenticity and this goodness about the man. Even though at times, and I think there's people that still probably don't necessarily like him as much because they couldn't see the good within him. But for the people that saw the good in him, they really loved him. When we lost Phil, I spoke at his funeral. I got to be able to help share my experience with him. When I'm in Pierre, South Dakota, the state capital, every once in a while I'll talk to newspaper people that are older, and Phil had been involved in the newspaper business. And I'll talk to him. There's kind of a wistful smile that they'll get. And they'll talk about his daughters. His daughters do a lot of really great things. They have great families. But the reality of having that step back, need to push pause for a minute in your life. And it might be that you take, 30 minutes before going to work, 30 minutes when coming home, and you just sit there and you think about it. It might be that you finish the project that you're on and you go take some time, go on a journey. Make no secret about how much I love skiing. And with skiing, when I go skiing, I'm in nature, which is positive. So it's communion with God, doing physical activity, which I'm good at, which allows me to demonstrate mastery, which is important, which is good. It allows me to be in community and have fellowship. Make a lot of friends when I'm skiing. I hear a lot of interesting stories. I talk to a lot of interesting people. I get to be present in that moment. And, I go do the stuff that I like to do there when I'm out skiing. So I'll go talk to people. I'll go to different events, whatever. But the point is that it's not just about work. We talk about a 31-year-old young man dying, building America. Let's be clear, that trucker that's hauling I-beams is an American worker that's building America. When we have those moments where somebody dies, we need to take that moment for reflection. We need to think about what their legacy is, what their legacy with us is, and how we want to carry that forward. For my buddy Phil, podcast is called Legendary Excellence. It's a nice homage to the man. I think about it every time. My political career, Phil always talked about politics. I was always really passionate about politics. But I noticed that talking about politics versus doing politics are two different things. We can have a conceptual understanding. We can be the critic. We can be somebody that's an analysis. But until you're somebody that's actually in the ring, doing the battle, doing the work, coming up with the solutions, I don't think you have capacity to really, truly impact things. And that was something with Phil, was that he had brilliant ideas, he had brilliant concepts, but very low execution. And I saw that in myself. When I say it, it hurts because I think about how much time I wasted. And that finite aspect about human life, I am certain that we are souls that are inhabiting a skeleton, some cells, and all of these things. That God put us here. We were created. We were not put on this earth just to work. We were not put on this work just for toil. We were put on this earth to live in fellowship. We were put on this earth so that our voices, our character, our spirit can lift up those around us, that we can live lives of great service and great purpose. I don't know the gentleman that passed away, but I know a bunch of his buddies. And when we think about the conversations that we have, oftentimes they're like 5 a.m. and it's when I'm getting on a flight, or when you're going to work, or when you're going to go do something fun because you got a day off of work. But we're not just here to work. The brilliance that you have when we start talking about auto racing, when we start talking about writing books, when we start talking about raising families and being able to create families, I want to take this moment where this gentleman who passed away, I want you to remember every single day what he didn't get to do and what you have the opportunity to do today. I want you to genuinely step back and think that if you were the guy in the truck on Interstate 24 outside of Nashville, and that steel beam is going through you, did you do everything that you could do? Because it's a hard question. For me personally, it wasn't until my buddy Phil died and I sat there at his funeral and I looked at all those people there that knew the guy. All those grandkids that he talked every time I talked to him about how much he loved his grandkids. Every time. He talked about what he wanted to give them. He talked about his legacy. He talked about all these things. And at the end of the day, our talk denotes an intent. Our talk is an indicator. It can be a positive indicator. But our actions are what really matter. Our actions are what define who we are and what we do. Our actions show the decision made in our heart. Our actions show the walk that we're on, and the pathway and the journey. When you have clear, defined goals, it doesn't matter if there's a path or not. Most of the time when you're doing something really big, there's no path. And it's uncomfortable the first time. Second time it gets a little better, and then you just get used to it. Same way we get used to being on the turbine deck. Same way we get used to driving truck, I-beams. Same way we get used to using the hockey stick to pull bearings. You get used to it. And when you get used to it, when you get aware of it, it stops mattering. And for the men and women that are watching this, that are on turbine decks, they're driving trucks, that are building businesses, they're running governments, you're used to it. This is what your everyday normal looks like. And if you have that everyday normal, you want to think about how special it is, how you can lift others up to be able to do the same thing, but also how you can live a truly stupendous life. How you can live a life that if you're 31 and that I-beam's going through your chest, you don't question it. It's not an easy thing. Everybody that's ever worked construction has had that moment where it could have worked out really different. Remember when I first started working in construction, I was working with cranes. I was working for a company that was very substandard. I was working for a company that probably 10 OSHA violations every day. Now that I understand it now, but I didn't know anything. So I went there and I was enthusiastic and I had a desire to be able to be a part of it. And I wanted to get in construction, so I jumped into it. When I look back on it now, I could be that guy. I could be that guy with the I-beam going through his chest. I could be the guy with the legs blown off. Every single day is a moment of grace. When I talk about being pro-life and what that means to me, pro-life isn't about birth, just about birth and death. It's about every aspect of your life being defined and to be a testimony of what your beliefs are and how you show your belief in God, your esteem for your fellow men and women, your esteem for your society, and your stewardship for who you are and what you do. When my buddy Phil died, it really offended me. At a deep, elemental level, it offended me. Because to have a man of such brilliance, to have the songs and the poems and the wonder that he would look with, that he looked at the world with, the curiosity, the friendships, the knowledge of the community. I mean, he could tell you what trees were, had good cherries or good apricots or whatever. And he was going and getting them. He wasn't always asking. But he had that true, authentic spirit that is so rare in this world. And y'all watching this have that true, authentic spirit that is so rare in this world. And I'll tell you, till the day I die, that following Jesus Christ is the way and the truth. But if you haven't really looked and you haven't really tried to find your path, you're not giving yourself that true life. You're not going and trying. I remember when I got sober. I've been sober over 11 years. I was looking for every possible answer I could find to find out how to improve my life. Because when I was doing the drugs and the alcohol, all I was focused on was that I want to go not feel what I'm feeling. When I got sober, there was a big gap in my life. I got really into yoga. I got really into CrossFit. Got in decent shape. I still ate too much. It took time to be able to figure that out. It took time to be able to get everything untangled from how my life was. But once I got those glimpses of freedom, and once I started to get free of those challenges that I was dealing with, it was a completely different path. When Phil died, it's funny when you look at my life, because it was before Phil's death and after Phil's death. I got really serious. I got really, really serious. I got intensely involved in my nonprofit. I got intensely involved in some of the organizations I was in leadership in. I got intensely involved in going and living my life. For my buddies that go work crazy hours all the time, for my buddies that are consistently working to create power, that are working to be able to help agricultural facilities, that are working to build the dams and the bridges, we all have a sword over our head. We don't know when we're dying. There's things that happened to me as a youth that could make my life really short. And I lived for a long time paralyzed by the fear of that death. When I think about the preciousness of life, when I think about that young man dying on an interstate building America, when I think about Bill dying in a hospital after being blown up in the rubble of his house, I can only come to the conclusion that life is an immensely precious gift. I can only come to the conclusion that how we live our life is a testament about how we see ourselves and how we see our place in this world. I was talking to a young woman who had just gotten a big award. Last weekend I was in Atlanta. She has a nonprofit that feeds homeless people. And she was talking about challenges that she had in life. And she had brain cancer. And she talked about how she's a conqueror of brain cancer. And there's a spirit that that young woman had. There's a truth that is testified through her words, her deeds, and her actions. That when you meet somebody and you see somebody that's on a mission, and when you see somebody that has that clarity, that has that understanding, that it's a heck of a blessing. That it's a truly amazing thing to witness. That it's an honor to know that person. When we carry forward from dealing with grief and loss, we always want to think about what were the best aspects of that person. What was the future that we saw in those people? What is the lesson that person's there to tell us? Because when we really, truly understand and grow and really, truly appreciate and live the preciousness of this life. People talk about pro-life and they say you just want to control people. You just wanted this, you just wanted that. My life is a miracle. The lives of my friends around me are miracles. We have to cherish it. We have to accept and understand that our existence is for a reason. We can have great, noble, positive reasons why we do things. Having the light switch work is a really noble reason. I got a bunch of friends that work in the power generation industry, and I have to say that's an incredibly noble purpose. But I would ask the question, is that if a doctor went and the doctor worked for 713s for 6 months straight, would you want him operating on you? How much time do you want to devote to helping society? How much time do you want to devote to building your life? Because you can't get the time back. You'll never get the time back. When you live a truly amazing life, when you decide and commit, when you put away all the toys from childhood, and you truly decide that you're going to live it. You're going to live it unvarnished. You're going to live it unmedicated. You're going to truly live an amazing life. We have friends that pass away. It's these moments. It's these moments where we get that opportunity to decide and to really reflect on how precious this existence is. When you really reflect how precious your life is, to think about custom fabricated race cars, farming, ranching, art, having children, raising families, cherished time together. Those are the things that really matter. It's a sacrifice to decide to build America. It's an important and critical sacrifice. I honor anybody that makes that decision. So too, if you're making that decision, do not let your life slip by. Don't take it for granted. Choose life every single time, every single way. Last big job I was on down in San Antonio, Texas. I didn't do it every day, but a couple days a week, I would go make art. Go sit on the river walk. I'd go have good meals. I'd go find places where I can get fellowship. Remember, when people pass, go live a good life. Don't spend your time scrolling. Don't spend your time looking at porn. Don't spend your time doing all this nonsense. Don't spend your time in resentment, being mad about stuff. If you have grief, if you have challenges, find ways to process the grief and the challenges. It's worth it. But remember, your life, right now, today, is a precious gift. It's not something to waste. It's not something to squander. It's not something to hide away in bottles of booze and beer or in drugs. It's something to be lived and experienced. So with that, choose life. God bless you. Live with legendary excellence. We'll talk again soon.